The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her combat gear one final time. The weight of her standard-issue M4 carbine felt familiar against her shoulder, but she couldn't help thinking about the custom rifle case locked away in her personal storage back at base. Nobody on Alpha Team knew about that case or what it contained. To them, she was just another communications specialist who happened to be good at her job. "Santos, you ready to move out?" called Sergeant First Class Jake Morrison, the team leader. His voice carried the authority of someone who had led countless missions in these Afghan mountains. Morrison was a good soldier, respected by his men, but he had one blind spot. He underestimated the women in his unit. "Roger that, Sergeant," Maria replied, checking her radio equipment one last time. The mission was supposed to be routine. Establish a forward observation post on Hill 847 and provide communications support for the main operation happening 10 clicks south. Intelligence reports suggested the area was clear of enemy activity. Of course, intelligence reports in Afghanistan had a way of being wrong more often than anyone cared to admit. The team consisted of 8 soldiers. Besides Morrison and Maria, there was Corporal Tommy Chen, a machine gunner whose optimism never seemed to fade despite 3 tours in country. Private First Class David Rodriguez served as the team's medic, carrying enough supplies to patch up a small army. Specialist Mike Johnson handled demolitions, his pockets always jingling with various explosive devices. Private Williams was their youngest member at 19, eager to prove himself but still green around the edges. Staff Sergeant Brown brought experience as their second-in-command, while Corporal Peterson rounded out the group as their designated marksman. What none of them knew was that Maria Santos had grown up on a ranch in Texas, learning to shoot before she could properly ride a bicycle. Her father, a former Marine sniper, had taught her that shooting wasn't just about pulling a trigger. It was about reading wind, understanding ballistics, and most importantly, having the patience to wait for the perfect moment. By age 16, she could put 5 rounds through a quarter-sized target at 600 yards. By 18, she was winning civilian marksmanship competitions across 3 states. The Army had seen her scores during basic training and quietly noted her potential. But Maria had requested communications training, wanting to prove she could contribute to her team in multiple ways. The sniper school invitation had come twice, and twice she had declined. She preferred working with people, not isolating herself on distant hills. Besides, her team needed a good radio operator, and she was determined to be the best they ever had. The patrol began before dawn, with Morrison setting a steady pace through the mountain passes. The terrain was unforgiving. Loose rocks that could twist an ankle, steep inclines that left even experienced soldiers breathing hard, and countless hiding spots where enemies could observe their movement. Maria found herself naturally scanning the ridgelines as they moved, her eyes automatically identifying potential sniper positions. Old habits from hunting trips with her father died hard. "Beautiful country," Chen commented during a brief rest, gazing out at the valley below them. "Too bad people keep trying to kill each other in it." Chen commented, "Too bad people keep trying to kill each other in it." "That's Afghanistan for you," Brown replied, taking a long drink from his water bottle. "Graveyard of empires, they call it." Russians learned that the hard way. Maria listened to their conversation while monitoring radio traffic. The main operation was proceeding on schedule, with no reported enemy contact. That should have been reassuring. But something felt wrong. The mountains were too quiet. In her experience, when things seemed too easy in Afghanistan, it usually meant trouble was waiting around the next corner. The team reached their designated position just after 0800 hours. Hill 847 offered excellent visibility over the surrounding valley, with clear lines of sight to several key terrain features. Morrison deployed the team in a defensive perimeter while Maria set up the communications equipment. The radios crackled to life, connecting them with battalion headquarters and the various units operating in their sector. "Alpha Team in position," Morrison reported, establishing overwatch on Valley Route 7. "No enemy activity observed." "Copy, Alpha Team," came the response from headquarters. "Maintain position and report any movement. Be advised, intel suggests possible enemy reconnaissance in your area. Maria's attention sharpened. Possible reconnaissance meant they might not be alone on these mountains. She glanced around the perimeter, noting how exposed their position was from the higher ridgelines to the north and east. If enemy spotters were watching, they would have clear shots at the team. Peterson had set up his designated marksman rifle on the western edge of their position, covering the main approach route. He was a decent shot, capable of engaging targets out to about 400 yards effectively. But Maria could see several positions beyond his range where threats could hide. She considered mentioning this to Morrison but decided against it. Questioning the team's tactical setup might be seen as overstepping her role as communications specialist. The morning passed quietly, with routine radio checks and reports of no activity. Chen cleaned his machine gun for the third time, a nervous habit he had developed during his first deployment. Williams kept checking his ammunition count, still not entirely comfortable with the responsibility of combat operations. Rodriguez organized his medical supplies, making sure everything was easily accessible in case of casualties. Around midday, Morrison called for a meal break. The team ate their MREs in shifts, maintaining security while trying to enjoy the processed military food. Maria had drawn the beef stew, which actually wasn't terrible by MRE standards. She ate mechanically, her attention focused on the radio and the surrounding terrain. "Santos, you're awfully quiet today," Johnson observed. "Usually you're telling us stories about Texas or complaining about the radio equipment." Maria smiled. "Just focused on the mission, specialist. These mountains make me nervous." "You've been in country for 10 months, Brown said. "What's different about today?" She paused, trying to put her unease into words. "It's too quiet. No aircraft overhead. No distant explosions. No radio chatter about enemy contact anywhere in the sector. In my experience, that usually means something big is about to happen." Morrison looked up from his map. "Intel says the area is clear. We're just here to provide communications support and watch the valley." Nothing complicated about that, but Maria wasn't convinced. Her father had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming that danger was near. She decided to use her position at the radio to monitor all the frequencies she could access, hoping to pick up some indication of what might be coming their way. The afternoon brought increased radio traffic as various units began moving to their evening positions. Maria tracked the movements on her map, noting that Alpha Team was becoming increasingly isolated as other units pulled back to more defensible locations for the night. She mentioned this to Morrison, who dismissed her concerns. "We're in an overwatch position, Santos. We're supposed to be out here observing. Besides, if something was wrong, headquarters would let us know." As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, Maria noticed movement on a distant ridgeline. It was subtle, just a brief glint of metal or glass that caught the light. She studied the area through her binoculars, but couldn't make out any details. It might have been nothing, just a piece of debris reflecting sunlight. But her instincts told her otherwise. "Peterson, you see anything on the ridgeline at 2 o'clock?" she asked the designated marksman. Peterson swung his rifle around and peered through his scope. "Negative. What did you think you saw?" "Maybe nothing. Just a reflection of some kind." But as the minutes passed, Maria spotted more reflections from different positions on the surrounding ridgelines. Someone was definitely out there, and they had the team surrounded. She tried to estimate ranges to the various positions, automatically calculating wind drift and bullet drop. Most of the suspected enemy positions were beyond Peterson's effective range, but well within her capabilities if she had proper equipment. The radio crackled with an urgent transmission. "All units, be advised we have reports of enemy sniper teams operating in Sector 7. Recommend extreme caution and immediate reporting of any suspicious activity." Morrison's expression grew serious. "Santos, get me battalion on the horn. I need to report those reflections you spotted." But before Maria could key the radio, the first shot rang out across the valley. The distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle echoed off the mountain walls. and Corporal Chen suddenly spun around and fell behind his machine gun position. "Sniper!" Peterson shouted, scanning desperately through his scope for the source of the shot. Maria was already moving, grabbing her medical kit as she low-crawled toward Chen's position. The young corporal was conscious but bleeding heavily from a shoulder wound. The bullet had hit high, probably intended for his head but thrown off by distance and wind. "Doc, I need you over here," Maria called to Rodriguez, while applying pressure to Chen's wound. More shots began ringing out from multiple positions on the ridgelines. The team was caught in a coordinated ambush by enemy snipers who had clearly been watching their position for hours. Morrison tried to organize a response, but Peterson couldn't effectively engage targets at such long range. His return fire was largely ineffective, serving mainly to reveal their exact positions to the enemy marksmen. Williams panicked and tried to make a run for better cover, drawing immediate fire from at least 2 different snipers. He made it only about 10 yards before a bullet caught him in the leg, sending him tumbling behind a small boulder. "Stay down. Everyone stay down," Morrison ordered. But the damage was already done. The enemy had them pinned down with superior firepower and position. The team's standard weapons were useless at such extreme range, and they were rapidly becoming sitting ducks. Maria finished bandaging Chen's shoulder and looked around at her teammates. Fear was written on every face, and she could see Morrison struggling to find a solution to their desperate situation. Peterson continued firing his designated marksman rifle, but his shots were falling short of the enemy positions. They needed something with more range, more precision, and most importantly, someone who knew how to use it effectively. That's when Maria made a decision that would change everything. She had spent months hiding her true capabilities, wanting to fit in as just another member of the team, but now her friends were dying, and conventional weapons weren't going to save them. It was time to reveal who she really was. "Sergeant Morrison," she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. I can stop these snipers, but I'm going to need Peterson's rifle and complete trust in my abilities." Morrison looked at her in confusion. "Santos, your communications. Stay on the radio and call for support. Support is 20 minutes out, and we'll all be dead by then," Maria replied, crawling toward Peterson's position. "Those aren't random shots. Those are professional marksmen with quality equipment. They're playing with us right now, but they're going to start putting rounds center mass very soon." Another shot rang out, this time striking the rock inches from Rodriguez's head. The message was clear. The enemy was finished with warning shots. "Peterson, I need your rifle," Maria said, reaching for the weapon. "Are you crazy?" Peterson responded. "You don't know how to use this thing." Maria looked him directly in the eyes. "Trust me, Corporal, I know exactly how to use it." Something in her tone must have convinced him, because Peterson reluctantly handed over his rifle and spare ammunition. Maria quickly examined the weapon, checking the scope settings and ammunition type. It wasn't ideal. She would have preferred her custom rifle with hand-loaded ammunition, but it would have to do. She had kept her true identity hidden for months. But now there was no choice. Her teammates were counting on her, and she was the only one who could save them. As she settled into a shooting position, Maria Santos transformed from a communications specialist into something her team had never imagined possible. The fight for Hill 847 was about to begin, and the enemy had no idea what they were up against. Maria Santos settled behind Peterson's rifle, with a calmness that surprised even herself. The familiar weight of the weapon felt different from her father's old hunting rifle. But the fundamentals remained the same. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her breathing slow and her mind clear of everything except the task ahead. When she opened them again, she was no longer Maria, the communications specialist. She was Maria the hunter, just like she had been on countless mornings in the Texas Hill Country. The first thing she needed to do was identify the enemy positions. Through the rifle scope, she began a systematic scan of the ridgelines where she had spotted the reflections earlier. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Patience, girl. The mountain will tell you its secrets if you know how to listen." There, on the eastern ridge, approximately 700 yards out, a slight disturbance in the natural rock pattern revealed the muzzle of a rifle. The position was well chosen, offering excellent concealment and fields of fire. But the sniper had made one small mistake. A tiny reflection from his scope lens caught the afternoon light at just the right angle. Maria studied the position carefully, noting the wind flags she had mentally placed during their approach to Hill 847. The wind was coming from the northwest at about 8 miles per hour, gusting to 12. At 700 yards, that would push her bullet approximately 14 inches to the right. She made the necessary adjustments to Peterson's scope, grateful that he had at least zeroed the weapon properly. "Santos, what are you doing?" Morrison hissed from his position behind a large boulder. "Get back on the radio." "Sir, respectfully, I need 30 seconds of silence," Maria replied without taking her eye from the scope. Her voice carried an authority that none of them had heard before, something that made Morrison pause despite the chaos around them. The enemy sniper on the eastern ridge was preparing to fire again. Maria could see him making slight adjustments to his position, probably lining up a shot on Peterson's exposed position. She controlled her breathing, letting half the air out of her lungs before holding steady. The crosshairs settled on a point just above where she estimated the enemy's head would be, compensating for bullet drop and wind drift. Her father had taught her that shooting was as much mental as physical. "Don't think about pulling the trigger," he used to say. "Think about where the bullet needs to go. Your finger will know what to do." Maria thought about Chen, bleeding behind his machine gun. She thought about Williams, crying out in pain from his leg wound. She thought about her teammates who were counting on her, even though they didn't know it yet. The rifle fired almost by itself. 700 yards away, the enemy sniper's rifle suddenly went silent. Through her scope, Maria saw the weapon tumble down the rocky slope, no longer controlled by human hands. One down. "Holy shit," Peterson breathed. "Did you just—" "Second target, northwest ridge," Maria interrupted, already swinging the rifle to a new position. 800 yards. Wind from his right. He's moving to get a better angle on Rodriguez. This shot was more challenging. The range was longer, and the target was partially concealed behind a rock formation. Maria could see just the top portion of the enemy sniper's head and part of his rifle scope. It was a tiny target at that distance, requiring absolute precision. She adjusted for the increased range and wind effect, then settled into her shooting position again. This time, she could feel her teammates watching her with a mixture of amazement and disbelief. But their attention didn't distract her. If anything, it sharpened her focus. The second enemy sniper was taking his time, probably wondering what had happened to his partner on the eastern ridge. That hesitation cost him his life. Maria's bullet found its mark, and another rifle fell silent on the surrounding mountains. 2 down, she announced calmly, beginning another scan for additional threats. "Morrison, I need you to start moving the wounded to better cover. There are at least 5 more snipers out there." Morrison stared at her in shock. "Santos, who the hell are you?" "Right now, I'm the only thing standing between this team and a body bag," Maria replied, her eye never leaving the scope. "Third target, southern ridge. He's the closest one, about 400 yards. Peterson could have taken that shot if he'd spotted the position." She was right. The third sniper was much closer than the others, positioned on a rocky outcrop that offered excellent concealment but limited mobility. He had probably been tasked with preventing the team from escaping down the southern slope. Maria could see him clearly through the scope, and at 400 yards, the wind effect would be minimal. This shot felt different from the others. At the closer range, she could make out more details about her target. He looked young, maybe not much older than Williams. For a brief moment, Maria hesitated, but then another bullet cracked overhead, reminding her that hesitation could cost her teammates their lives. The third enemy sniper never knew what hit him. 3 down, Maria reported, continuing her methodical search of the ridgelines. "Johnson, I need you to prep some demo charges. When I give the word, I want you to create some noise and smoke on the western slope. Make it look like we're trying to escape in that direction." Johnson fumbled for his explosives, still trying to process what he was witnessing. "Santos, where did you learn to shoot like that?" "Texas," she replied simply. Fourth target, Northern Ridge. This one's smart. He's moved twice since the shooting started. Range approximately 600 yards. The fourth sniper was indeed clever. He had recognized the threat and relocated to a more defensible position. But movement created opportunities for a trained observer. And Maria had been tracking his relocation through peripheral vision while engaging the other targets. This position was more challenging because the sniper had chosen a spot with multiple escape routes. If she missed or only wounded him, he could relocate again and become much harder to find. Maria studied the position carefully, looking for any weakness she could exploit. There, a small gap in the rocks where the sniper would have to expose himself to get a clear shot at Alpha Team's position. Maria aimed at the gap and waited. Patience had always been her strongest asset as a marksman. Her father used to take her deer hunting, where they would sit motionless for hours waiting for the perfect shot opportunity. The enemy sniper eventually made his move, sliding his rifle barrel through the gap in the rocks. For just a moment, Maria could see part of his head and shoulder. It was enough. 4 down, she announced. Brown, how are Chen and Williams doing? Chen's stable, Rodriguez reported from behind his makeshift aid station. Williams lost some blood from the leg wound, but he'll live. Santos, I don't know how you're doing this, but keep it up. Maria was already searching for the 5th target. According to her count, there should be at least 3 more snipers out there. The enemy had set up a complex ambush with overlapping fields of fire, suggesting professional military training and experience. These weren't local insurgents with old hunting rifles. These were skilled marksmen with quality equipment. 5th target, Eastern Ridge again, she called out. Different position from the first one. Range approximately 800 yards. This one's being very careful. The 5th sniper had learned from his dead comrade's mistakes. He was using minimal exposure, firing only when he had clear shots, and immediately moving to alternate positions. Maria could see just the occasional glint of his scope lens, never enough to get a clear shot. Johnson, execute that diversion now, Maria ordered. I need this guy to expose himself for just a few seconds. Johnson triggered his demolition charges on the western slope, creating a spectacular explosion that echoed across the valley. Smoke and debris filled the air, and for a moment, it looked like Alpha Team might be attempting to escape in that direction. The enemy sniper took the bait, shifting his position to get a better angle on the supposed escape route. For just 3 seconds, he was clearly visible through Maria's scope. It was all the time she needed. 5 down, she reported. 2 more to go, but they're going to be the hardest ones. They've been watching me work, and they know what they're up against now. Morrison crawled over to her position, his expression a mixture of awe and confusion. Santos, I need to know what the hell is going on here. Since when do communications specialists take out enemy snipers at 800 yards? Maria kept her eye on the scope while she answered. Since they grow up on Texas ranches learning to shoot before they can drive. My father was a Marine sniper in Vietnam. He taught me everything he knew. Then why aren't you in sniper school? Brown asked from his position with the wounded. Because this team needed a good radio operator, Maria replied. And because I like working with people, not sitting alone on a mountain. But right now, sitting alone on a mountain is exactly what's going to keep you all alive. She spotted movement on the northwestern ridge, nearly 900 yards away. 6th target. Extreme range. This one's professional. Look how he's using the terrain to mask his position. The 6th sniper was indeed skilled. He had chosen a position that offered excellent concealment while maintaining clear fields of fire on Alpha Team's location. At 900 yards, with variable wind conditions and the limitations of Peterson's rifle, this would be Maria's most challenging shot yet. She studied the ballistics problem carefully. 900 yards meant significant bullet drop, requiring her to aim well above the target. The wind had picked up and was now gusting unpredictably, making precise compensation difficult. And Peterson's rifle wasn't designed for such extreme long-range work. This is going to be close, Maria murmured, making fine adjustments to the scope. If I miss, he's going to relocate to a position where I can't reach him. She settled into her shooting position and began controlling her breathing. At this range, Even the slightest movement could throw the shot off by several feet. Maria thought about all the hours she had spent on her father's ranch, shooting at prairie dogs at extreme ranges. The fundamentals were the same. Steady position, proper breathing, smooth trigger control. The bullet's flight time at 900 yards would be over a second. That meant she had to predict not just where the target was, but where he would be when the bullet arrived. The enemy sniper was making small adjustments to his position, trying to get a better shot at Alpha Team. Maria timed his movement pattern and fired just as he started to shift positions. For a long moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, through her scope, she saw the enemy rifle tumble away from its firing position. 6 down, she announced, but there was no satisfaction in her voice. 1 more to go, and he's the smart one. He hasn't fired a shot since I started working. He's just been watching and learning. The 7th sniper was proving elusive. Maria had been scanning the ridgelines for several minutes without spotting any sign of him. That worried her more than anything else that had happened during the firefight. A patient, disciplined enemy sniper who knew he was being hunted was incredibly dangerous. Santos, Morrison said quietly, I owe you an apology, and probably my life. Save it for later, Sergeant, Maria replied, still searching through her scope. This last one is the most dangerous. He's been watching me take out his whole team, and he's smart enough not to make the same mistakes they did. She was right to be worried. The 7th sniper had indeed been learning from his comrades' deaths. He had identified Maria as the primary threat, and was now hunting her specifically. Somewhere in the mountains around Hill 847, a deadly game of cat and mouse was about to reach its climax. The afternoon sun was beginning to sink lower, creating longer shadows on the mountainsides. Soon, the changing light conditions would make precision shooting much more difficult. Maria knew she was running out of time to locate and eliminate the final threat. That's when she realized the terrible truth. The 7th sniper wasn't trying to shoot at Alpha Team anymore. He was waiting for her to expose herself, and then he was going to kill her specifically. The hunted had become the hunter, and Maria was now the primary target in a deadly duel between professional marksmen. The realization that she had become the hunted rather than the hunter sent a chill down Maria's spine. Somewhere out there, a skilled enemy marksman was studying her position, learning her patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to end her life. She forced herself to remain calm, drawing on years of training and natural instinct to analyze the situation logically. Morrison, I need everyone to start moving, Maria said quietly, never taking her eye from the scope. The last sniper isn't trying to hit the team anymore. He's targeting me specifically. As long as I'm in this position, you're all safer than you think. We're not leaving you behind, Santos, Morrison replied firmly. Whatever's happening here, we face it together. Maria appreciated the sentiment, but she knew it was tactically wrong. Sergeant, with respect, you need to think like a soldier, not a friend. I'm the only one who can reach this guy. But he knows where I am now. If the whole team stays bunched up, he might get lucky and take out multiple targets with one shot. She was buying time, hoping to spot some sign of the enemy's position while convincing her teammates to move to safer ground. The 7th sniper's patience told her everything she needed to know about his skill level. Amateur shooters would have taken hasty shots by now, revealing their positions. This man was a professional who understood that time was on his side. Rodriguez, how mobile are Chen and Williams? Maria asked. Chen can move with assistance, the medic reported. Williams needs to be carried, but it's doable. Good. Brown, take Peterson and Johnson and establish overwatch positions on the southern slope. If things go badly here, you'll need to provide covering fire for the wounded. Maria kept her voice steady, but inside she was calculating probabilities. None of them were good. The afternoon light was changing rapidly, creating new shadows and altering the visibility conditions she had been using to spot targets. In another hour, the sun would be too low for effective long-range shooting. The enemy sniper knew this too, which meant he would probably make his move soon. Maria began a systematic review of every possible shooting position within range of Hill 847. The seventh sniper would need a location that offered concealment, clear fields of fire, and multiple escape routes. He would also want to be at a range where his rifle performed better than Peterson's weapon, giving him a technical advantage. There were only 3 positions that met all those criteria. Maria studied each one carefully, looking for any sign of human presence. The first was a rocky outcrop about 600 yards to the northwest, offering excellent concealment but limited mobility. The second was a series of boulders on the eastern ridge, providing good escape routes, but less cover. The third was a depression on the northern slope that would be nearly invisible from Alpha Team's position. Something moved in the third location. Just a tiny shift in the shadows that most people would never notice. But Maria had been hunting since childhood, and her eyes were trained to detect the slightest anomaly in natural patterns. There he was. The enemy sniper had chosen his position perfectly. He was in a natural depression that would be almost impossible to spot from below. With clear shots at Maria's position and multiple routes for escape or relocation, the range was approximately 750 yards, well within his capabilities but pushing the limits of Peterson's rifle. But Maria had one advantage the enemy didn't know about. She had spotted him first. In sniper duels, the first person to acquire their target usually won. Now she just had to make the shot count, because she wouldn't get a second chance. "I've got him," Maria whispered to Morrison. "Northern slope, 750 yards. He's good. I can barely make out his position." "Can you take the shot?" Morrison asked. Maria studied the target through her scope. She could see just the edge of the enemy sniper's rifle scope and part of what might be his head or shoulder. At this range, with wind and the limitations of her borrowed weapon, it would be the most difficult shot of her life. "Maybe," she admitted, "but if I miss, he's going to relocate to a position where I can't reach him, and then we're all in serious trouble." She needed to create an advantage somehow. Something that would force the enemy sniper to expose himself more completely. Maria thought about the lessons her father had taught her about hunting dangerous game. Sometimes you had to take risks to create opportunities. "Peterson, do you have any tracer rounds for this rifle?" Maria asked. "A few," Peterson replied, checking his ammunition. "Why?" "I'm going to spot my own fall of shot," Maria explained. "If I can see where my first bullet impacts, I can correct for the second one. But I need you and Johnson to create a distraction exactly 10 seconds after I fire." It was a desperate plan, but it might work. The tracer round would reveal her position to the enemy, but it would also let her see exactly how the wind was affecting her bullets at that range. If her teammates could create enough chaos to mask her second shot, she might be able to correct her aim and hit the target. "Morrison, on my command, I need everyone to open fire at that position," Maria continued. "You won't hit anything at that range, but the noise and muzzle flashes will hopefully mask my exact location when I take the second shot." Morrison nodded grimly. "You sure about this, Santos?" "No," Maria replied honestly, "but it's the best plan I've got." She loaded a tracer round into Peterson's rifle and settled into her shooting position. Through the scope, she could still make out the enemy sniper's position, though he remained mostly concealed. Maria would have to aim at the center mass of what she thought was his body and hope the bullet found its target. The wind had steadied somewhat, coming from the northwest at about 10 miles per hour. At 750 yards, that would push her bullet about 18 inches to the right. Maria made the adjustment and controlled her breathing, preparing for the most important shots of her life. "Stand by," she whispered to her teammates, firing in 3, 2, 1. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and Maria watched the tracer's red streak arc across the valley toward the enemy position. The bullet impacted about 2 feet low and 6 inches to the right of where she had aimed. Close, but not close enough. The enemy sniper's response was immediate and professional. His rifle swung toward Alpha Team's position, and Maria realized she had only seconds before he returned fire. But instead of diving for cover, she worked the bolt on Peterson's rifle and loaded another round. "Now!" she shouted to her teammates. "Light him up!" The entire team opened fire simultaneously, sending a barrage of bullets toward the enemy position. None of them would reach the target, but the noise and chaos were exactly what Maria needed. Using the corrections she had observed from the tracer round, she adjusted her aim and fired again. This time, the bullet found its mark. Through her scope, Maria saw the enemy sniper's rifle tumble away from his position, and the threat that had been stalking Alpha Team finally fell silent. 7 down, Maria announced, her voice shaking slightly with exhaustion and adrenaline. That's all of them. The sudden quiet that followed was almost deafening. For the past hour, the mountains had echoed with gunfire and the crack of high-powered rifles. Now there was only the wind and the distant sound of helicopters approaching from the south. Morrison crawled over to Maria's position, his expression a mixture of amazement and gratitude. "Santos, I don't know what to say. You just saved all our lives." Maria set Peterson's rifle down carefully and looked around at her teammates. Chen was sitting up against a rock, his shoulder bandaged but his spirits high. Williams was pale from blood loss but smiling through his pain. Rodriguez was repacking his medical supplies, while Peterson stared at his rifle, as if seeing it for the first time. "I told you I was from Texas," Maria said with a tired smile. "We take our shooting seriously down there." "Seriously?" Johnson laughed. "Santos, what you just did was impossible. 7 targets at ranges up to 900 yards with a rifle you'd never used before. That's not serious. That's supernatural." But Maria knew it wasn't supernatural. It was the result of years of training that started when she was a little girl, following her father around a Texas ranch. It was countless hours of practice, learning to read, wind and weather, understanding the flight characteristics of different bullets. Most importantly, it was the ability to remain calm under pressure and make precise shots when lives depended on it. The approaching helicopters grew louder, and soon the distinctive sound of rotor blades filled the valley. Help was finally arriving. But Maria realized that everything had changed. She could never again be just the communications specialist who blended into the background. Her secret was out, and there would be consequences. "Morrison," she said quietly, "I need you to know that I didn't want it to happen this way. I was happy being your radio operator. I liked being part of the team without all the attention that comes with special skills." Morrison studied her for a moment. "Santos, as far as I'm concerned, you're still part of this team. You're just a part that we didn't fully understand until today." As the rescue helicopters landed in a swirl of dust and noise, Maria watched her teammates preparing to evacuate. They were all looking at her differently now, with a mixture of respect, awe, and curiosity. She had saved their lives, but in doing so, she had also fundamentally changed their relationship. The medics rushed to treat Chen and Williams while intelligence officers began photographing the enemy positions that Maria had neutralized. Soon, someone would want a detailed report of exactly how one communications specialist had single-handedly eliminated 7 enemy snipers. There would be questions, investigations, and probably recommendations for medals and promotions. But for now, Maria Santos was content to sit on Hill 847 with her teammates, grateful that everyone was going home alive. Tomorrow would bring complications and changes, but today had been about doing whatever was necessary to protect the people she cared about. As the helicopters prepared for takeoff, Morrison sat down beside her. "Santos, I have to ask, if you could shoot like that all along, why did you request communications training instead of sniper school?" Maria looked out over the valley where 7 enemy marksmen had learned too late that they had underestimated the wrong soldier. "Because, Sergeant, sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody expects." The flight back to base would give Maria time to think about what came next. Her secret was out, and there would be no going back to the anonymous role she had preferred. But as she looked at her teammates, alive and heading home because of her actions, she realized that some secrets were worth revealing when lives hung in the balance. The mountains of Afghanistan had witnessed many battles, but few as personal as the duel between Maria Santos and 7 enemy snipers. It was a story that would be told and retold, growing in legend with each telling, but for the 8 soldiers of Alpha Team, it would always be remembered as the day their communications specialist revealed herself to be something far more dangerous than any of them had ever imagined. The helicopter ride back to Forward Operating Base Courage took 45 minutes. But for Maria Santos, it felt like a lifetime. She sat quietly in the corner of the medical evacuation bird, watching the medics work on Chen and Williams while trying to process everything that had happened on Hill 847. Around her, the rest of Alpha Team kept stealing glances in her direction, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright amazement. The noise of the rotors made conversation impossible, which suited Maria fine. She needed time to think about what would happen next. By now, word of the engagement would have reached battalion headquarters, probably with exaggerated details about how their communications specialist had single-handedly eliminated an entire enemy sniper team. The Army loved stories like that, especially when they involved female soldiers proving themselves in combat. As the helicopter approached the base, Maria could see vehicles and personnel gathering on the landing pad. More people than usual for a routine medical evacuation. Someone had definitely been talking on the radio during their flight, spreading word about Alpha Team's miraculous survival against overwhelming odds. Maria sighed, knowing that her quiet days as an anonymous team member were officially over. The helicopter touched down with a gentle bump, and immediately medical personnel swarmed aboard to evacuate Chen and Williams. Both wounded soldiers were conscious and in good spirits, chattering excitedly to the medics about what they had witnessed on the mountain. Maria could hear fragments of their conversation over the dying whine of the rotors. Impossible shots. 700 yards. Never seen anything like it. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, the battalion commander, was waiting at the edge of the landing zone. Maria had only met her twice before, during routine briefings where she had blended into the background with the other enlisted personnel. Now, Colonel Mitchell was walking directly toward her with an expression of intense curiosity. "Staff Sergeant Santos," the colonel said, her voice carrying easily over the residual noise from the helicopter. "I need to see you in my office immediately for debriefing." "Yes, ma'am," Maria replied, shouldering her gear. As she walked toward the colonel's vehicle, she could feel dozens of eyes watching her. Word of the engagement had clearly spread throughout the base with typical military efficiency. The ride to battalion headquarters was conducted in relative silence, with Colonel Mitchell asking only basic questions about casualties and equipment status. But Maria could sense the colonel's mind working, probably trying to reconcile the communications specialist she thought she knew with the soldier who had just accomplished something extraordinary. Colonel Mitchell's office was Spartan but functional, decorated with maps of the local area and photographs from her previous commands. She gestured for Maria to take a seat across from her desk, then activated a digital recorder. "Staff Sergeant Santos. This is an official debriefing regarding engagement on Hill 847 at approximately 1,400 hours today. Please state your name, rank, and unit for the record." Staff Sergeant Maria Elena Santos, Communications Specialist, Alpha Team, Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion. Maria replied formally. "Sergeant Santos, according to preliminary reports from your team leader, you engaged and eliminated 7 enemy snipers at ranges between 400 and 900 yards using a borrowed, designated marksman rifle. Is this accurate?" Maria hesitated, knowing that her answer would change everything about her military career. "Yes, ma'am. That's accurate." Colonel Mitchell leaned back in her chair, studying Maria intently. "Sergeant Santos, your personnel file makes no mention of advanced marksmanship training. You scored expert on your basic rifle qualification. But that's hardly unusual. How do you explain today's performance?" "Ma'am, I grew up on a ranch in Texas. My father taught me to shoot when I was very young." Maria paused. "My father served as a Marine sniper in Vietnam. He passed on his skills to me." "And you never mentioned this during your enlistment interviews or training assessments?" "No, ma'am. I enlisted to serve as a communications specialist. My marksmanship background wasn't relevant to my chosen field." Colonel Mitchell consulted a file on her desk. "According to records, you were offered sniper school twice and declined both times. Why?" Maria chose her words carefully. "Ma'am, I wanted to be part of a team, not isolated on distant hilltops. I believed I could contribute more effectively as a communications specialist working closely with other soldiers." The colonel nodded thoughtfully. "And today, What changed your mind about using those skills? My teammates were dying, ma'am. 7 enemy snipers had us pinned down with superior position and firepower. Our standard weapons couldn't reach them effectively. It became clear that unconventional measures were necessary to save lives. Colonel Mitchell turned off the recorder and leaned forward. Sergeant Santos, what you accomplished today was remarkable by any standard. 7 confirmed kills at extreme range under combat conditions using an unfamiliar weapon. That's the kind of performance that creates legends. Maria shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Ma'am, I just did what was necessary to protect my team. I understand that, and it's commendable. But you need to understand something. This incident will have consequences for your career. By tomorrow morning, every senior officer in this theater will know your name. There will be requests for interviews, recommendations for medals, and almost certainly orders transferring you to specialized units. That was exactly what Maria had been afraid of. Ma'am, I'd prefer to remain with Alpha Team if possible. They're my brothers, and they trust me. Colonel Mitchell smiled sympathetically. Sergeant Santos, I appreciate your loyalty to your team, but the Army has invested considerable resources in training and equipment for specialized marksmen. Your demonstrated abilities represent a significant tactical asset that can save many more lives if properly utilized. What does that mean, ma'am? It means that within the week, you'll probably receive orders to report to the sniper school you've been avoiding. This time, it won't be optional. Maria felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. Everything she had tried to avoid by keeping her skills secret was about to happen anyway. The close bonds she had built with Alpha Team would be severed, replaced by the solitary existence of a professional sniper. Ma'am, may I speak freely? Of course. I understand the tactical value of my skills, but I'm concerned about losing the human connections that make this job worthwhile. Being part of a team gives me something to fight for beyond just completing missions. Colonel Mitchell nodded. I understand your concerns, Sergeant. But consider this. Your actions today saved 8 lives. Imagine how many more you could save with proper training and equipment. Sometimes our personal preferences have to take a back seat to the greater good. A knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Colonel Mitchell's aide entered with an urgent message. Ma'am, Major General Williams wants to speak with Sergeant Santos via video conference in 30 minutes. Maria's heart sank further. A major general wanting to speak with an enlisted soldier usually meant one thing. Her quiet military career was about to become very complicated. Thank you, Corporal, Colonel Mitchell said. Sergeant Santos, we'll continue this discussion later. For now, you should clean up and prepare to speak with the general. He'll want to hear about today's events directly from you. As Maria left the colonel's office, she reflected on the irony of her situation. She had enlisted in the Army to serve her country and protect her fellow soldiers, goals she had accomplished admirably as a communications specialist. But her attempts to remain anonymous and avoid attention had backfired spectacularly. Now she was facing the exact career path she had tried to avoid. Back in her quarters, Maria showered and changed into a fresh uniform. As she prepared for the video conference with Major General Williams, she thought about her father's advice from years ago. Sometimes, life gives you choices. And sometimes it makes choices for you. The measure of a person is how they respond when they don't get to choose. Her father had never wanted to be a sniper either. He had enlisted as a regular infantryman but had been identified for his marksmanship skills and pressed into specialized service. He had served with distinction in Vietnam, saving countless lives through his precision shooting. But he had always told Maria about the isolation and psychological burden of the sniper's role. The video conference with Major General Williams was brief but intense. The general congratulated Maria on her performance and informed her that she would be recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross, one of the Army's highest decorations for valor. He also confirmed Colonel Mitchell's prediction about sniper school, making it clear that Maria's special skills were too valuable to waste in a conventional communications role. Sergeant Santos, the general said through the video screen, exceptional soldiers sometimes have to accept exceptional responsibilities. Your country needs marksmen of your caliber, especially in this complex tactical environment. After the conference ended, Maria sat alone in the communications center, monitoring radio traffic from various units across the theater. It felt strange to think that this might be one of her last nights performing the job she had grown to love. Tomorrow would bring new orders, new training, and a fundamentally different role in the army. Corporal Chen appeared in the doorway, his arm in a sling but his spirits high. "Santos, I wanted to thank you before the brass whisks you away to some super-secret sniper program. How are you feeling, Chen?" "Like I've been shot," he grinned. "But alive. Thanks to you." Rodriguez says the bullet missed everything important by about 2 inches. "I'll be back on duty in a few weeks." They talked for several minutes about the day's events, with Chen marveling at the precision and calmness Maria had displayed under fire. Other members of Alpha Team gradually joined them, creating an impromptu reunion in the communications center. "Santos," Morrison said when the group had assembled, "I need you to know something. No matter where the Army sends you, or what fancy title they give you, you'll always be part of Alpha Team. What you did today, that's not something we'll ever forget." Williams, hobbling on crutches but determined to be present, added, "You saved our lives out there. But more than that, you showed us what real courage looks like. You gave up your anonymity and changed your whole career path just to keep us alive." As Maria looked around at her teammates, she realized that Colonel Mitchell had been partially right. Her skills could save many more lives if properly utilized in a specialized role. But she had been right too. The human connections she had built with these soldiers gave her something worth fighting for. The next morning brought official orders transferring Maria to the United States Army Sniper School at Fort Benning, Georgia. She had 2 weeks to complete her current duties and prepare for her new assignment. As she packed her personal belongings, Maria reflected on how quickly life could change. One afternoon of combat had transformed her from an anonymous communications specialist into a decorated hero facing a completely different future. But she had also learned something important about herself on Hill 847. When the situation demanded it, she could set aside her personal preferences and do whatever was necessary to protect the people she cared about. That realization would serve her well in the challenging days ahead. Whether she was operating alone on distant mountainsides or working with new teams who would never know the quiet soldier she had once been. 6 months later, Sergeant First Class Maria Santos crouched in a carefully concealed hide on a mountainside overlooking the Korangal Valley. Her custom-built M24 sniper rifle lay beside her, its bipod legs extended and scope covers removed. She had been in position for 18 hours, watching and waiting for a high-value target that intelligence sources promised would appear before dawn. The transformation from communications specialist to professional sniper had been more difficult than Maria had anticipated. The technical aspects of the training came naturally. She had already possessed most of the skills taught at sniper school, but learning to operate alone, without the constant companionship and support of a close-knit team, had been a significant psychological adjustment. Her spotter, Corporal Jason Miller, lay beside her with high-powered binoculars and a range-finding laser. Miller was a good soldier, competent and reliable, but their professional relationship lacked the personal bonds Maria had shared with Alpha Team. In the sniper world, partnerships were based on tactical necessity rather than genuine friendship. "Movement in the compound," Miller whispered, his voice barely audible even at close range. 3 individuals coming out of the main building. Maria shifted slightly behind her rifle, settling the crosshairs on the compound entrance. Through her scope, she could see 3 men in traditional Afghan clothing, walking toward a white pickup truck. One of them matched the description of their target, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout the region. "Confirm identification," Maria murmured, her eye never leaving the scope. The shot would be approximately 600 yards, well within her capabilities, but requiring perfect execution. There would be no opportunity for a second chance if she missed. Miller consulted the photographs and description provided by intelligence. Target confirmed. Middle individual, white beard, distinctive scar on left cheek. That's definitely Mullah Kazim. Maria controlled her breathing and settled into her shooting position. The wind was minimal, coming from her left at about 5 miles per hour. The morning air was cool and still, providing ideal conditions for precision shooting. She had taken more difficult shots during her time in Afghanistan, but each one carried the weight of life and death decisions. The crosshairs settled on the target's chest, and Maria began her final breathing cycle. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. When you're about to take a life, make sure you understand why it's necessary. Then do what needs to be done without hesitation or doubt. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed across the valley. 600 yards away, Mullah Kazim collapsed beside his truck, the victim of Maria's precise marksmanship. His bodyguards immediately began scanning the surrounding mountains, but Maria and Miller were already preparing to evacuate their position. Confirmed hit, Miller reported into his radio. Target is down, initiating extraction. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to move to their secondary position, Maria reflected on how routine such missions had become. In 6 months of specialized operations, she had successfully engaged 17 targets at ranges from 400 to over 1,000 yards. Each shot had been tactically necessary, protecting coalition forces and Afghan civilians from individuals who coordinated attacks and terror campaigns. But despite her professional success, Maria still missed the camaraderie and human connections she had experienced with Alpha Team. Sniper operations were inherently solitary, requiring long periods of isolation and minimal personal interaction. Even when working with a spotter like Miller, the relationship remained strictly professional. The extraction helicopter arrived exactly on schedule, lifting Maria and Miller away from the mountainside before enemy forces could locate their position. As they flew back to base, Maria thought about the message she had received the previous evening. Alpha Team was rotating back to the United States for 2 weeks of leave before their next deployment, and Morrison had invited her to join them for a reunion dinner. 2 days later, Maria found herself sitting in a restaurant in downtown Kandahar, surrounded by the soldiers who had become her brothers on Hill 847. Chen's shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a small scar as evidence of his close call with death. Williams walked with a slight limp, but remained in active duty. The rest of the team looked older and more experienced, bearing the subtle marks of soldiers who had seen extended combat. "Santos," Morrison said, raising his beer in a toast. "Or should I say Sergeant First Class Santos? Look at you with that fancy promotion and sniper badge." Maria smiled, feeling more relaxed than she had in months. "It's still just Santos to you guys. Some things don't change, no matter what badges they give me. So tell us about life as a super-secret sniper," Johnson asked with genuine curiosity. "Is it as exciting as the movies make it look?" "Mostly it involves lying motionless in uncomfortable positions for extended periods," Maria replied diplomatically. She couldn't discuss the details of her missions, but she could share some of the general challenges and experiences. "The technical aspects are interesting, but I miss working with a real team." Rodriguez, ever the medic, studied her closely. "You look tired, Santos. Are they working you too hard in the elite units?" "It's not the workload," Maria admitted. "It's the isolation. Sniper operations are usually conducted by 2-person teams, with minimal contact with other units. Sometimes I go weeks without having a real conversation with anyone except my spotter." Brown nodded understandingly. "That's the trade-off with specialized roles. More individual responsibility but less human connection. I've heard similar complaints from special operations guys." The conversation continued throughout the evening, with each team member sharing stories from their recent operations. Alpha Team had continued their communications and observation missions throughout the region, building on the experience and bonds they had formed during their early deployment. Their success rate and unit cohesion had earned them recognition as one of the most effective teams in the battalion. "Santos," Morrison said as the evening wound down, "I have something to tell you. Colonel Mitchell asked me to sound you out about a potential reassignment." Maria looked up with interest. "What kind of reassignment?" "They're forming a new unit that combines sniper capabilities with traditional team operations. Instead of 2-person sniper teams, they want small units that include a precision marksman as an integral team member. The idea is to give conventional forces organic long-range capability without losing the team dynamics that make them effective." This was exactly what Maria had been hoping for. A way to use her specialized skills while maintaining the human connections that made military service meaningful. "Tell me more about this unit." Morrison pulled out a folder with official documents. It's called the Enhanced Precision Team Concept. 8-person units with traditional roles plus an integrated sniper. The sniper provides long-range capability while still participating in team operations and decision-making. Maria studied the documents carefully. The concept made tactical sense, giving small units the ability to engage distant targets without requesting support from separate sniper teams. More importantly for her, it would allow her to work closely with other soldiers again instead of operating in isolation. They want me to lead the pilot program, Morrison continued. And they specifically requested you as the precision marksman. Apparently, our performance on Hill 847 convinced some people that this concept could work. What about the rest of Alpha Team? Chen, Williams, Rodriguez, Brown, Johnson, and Peterson would all transfer to the new unit if you agree. We'd be the test case for whether integrated sniper teams are more effective than traditional arrangements. Maria felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of working with her original teammates again, but she also understood the professional implications. This would be an experimental program with uncertain results. If it doesn't work, we could all end up with damaged careers. True, Morrison acknowledged. But if it does work, we could be setting the standard for how the Army integrates precision marksmen in the future. Plus, we'd be working together again. The decision wasn't difficult for Maria. Despite her success as a traditional sniper, she had never stopped missing the bonds and shared purpose she had experienced with Alpha Team. The opportunity to combine her specialized skills with meaningful team relationships was exactly what she had been hoping for. When do we start? She asked. Morrison grinned. Next month. They're giving us 6 months to prove the concept works. Then they'll decide whether to expand the program or return everyone to conventional roles. Over the following weeks, Maria prepared for her transition to the Enhanced Precision Team. She worked with military planners to develop new tactics and procedures that would allow a sniper to operate effectively as part of a larger unit. The challenges were significant. Traditional sniper operations required stealth and concealment, while team operations often involved more visible activities that could compromise a marksman's position. But Maria was confident that the concept could work. Her experience on Hill 847 had proven that precision marksmanship could be decisive in team survival, while her months as a traditional sniper had refined her technical skills to a professional level. Combining those capabilities with the tactical flexibility and mutual support of a close-knit team promised to create something more effective than either approach alone. The Enhanced Precision Team's first mission took place 3 months later on a mountainside very similar to Hill 847. This time, however, Maria was lying in a sniper hide with full knowledge and support of her teammates, who were positioned to provide security and assistance if needed. When enemy forces attempted to establish their own observation post on a nearby ridge, Maria was able to neutralize the threat while Alpha Team coordinated supporting fires and escape routes. The mission was a complete success, demonstrating that integrated sniper teams could indeed combine the best aspects of both specialized and conventional operations. Maria had her precision capabilities and team relationships, while Alpha Team gained organic long-range firepower that dramatically increased their tactical options. 6 months later, the Enhanced Precision Team concept was approved for expansion throughout the Army. Maria received another promotion and was assigned to train other precision marksmen in integrated team operations. But more importantly, she had found a way to serve her country effectively while maintaining the human connections that gave her service meaning. Years later, when military historians studied the evolution of small unit tactics in Afghanistan, they would point to the Enhanced Precision Team concept as a significant innovation that saved countless lives and improved mission effectiveness. But for Maria Santos and the soldiers of Alpha Team, it would always be remembered as proof that the best military capabilities emerge when technical skills are combined with genuine human bonds and shared purpose. The girl from Texas who had learned to shoot on her father's ranch had found her place in the modern Army, not as an isolated specialist, but as an integral member of a team that trusted her completely and relied on her unique abilities to keep them all alive. It was exactly the balance she had been searching for since that fateful day on Hill 847 when her secret was revealed and everything changed forever.